It looks like it's that time again where I torture myself by looking at all of the Mustangs available on this month's internet adoption. There are quite a few horses that have been up for adoption a few times that I've had my eyeballs on, but there's also a bunch of new horses from a recent gather. I'm not sure if it's the time of year, but I noticed there are a lot of older plain bay mares available. It looks like there are 12 pickup locations available for this auction. I'll be really interested to see if that has any effect on the prices. It's also a very good time of year to be buying horses. With 4 hours left to bid, this girl still doesn't have any bites on her. Another plain bay older mare is this one that I showed in my whirl video. She's got a double whirl and seems like she could be a super handy horse. My favorite gelding from this sale is from the White Mountain Gather. He is 13 years old and he is a very handsome looking horse. This guy was rounded up at the end of August last year, I believe, so he's not even been in holding for a year and seems to be a pretty good-minded horse. Because we are getting so close to the end of the sale, I'm just going to pop over and see what the high bids are looking like. Just as a reminder, these are unhandled horses. When they do vaccinate them and put their freeze brands on, they are in a squeeze chute, so a little bit differently than how they handle domestic horses. I believe this White Mountain HMA group of horses is pretty heavily photographed, and I think that's going to have a big impact on the price that they go for in the end. While this horse is super handsome, I still find it very hard to think about paying several $1,000s for one of these untrained horses. I know people get very attached after seeing majestic pictures of them in the wild, so I can't blame people for wanting to snatch them up when they do get put up for sale. Personally, I like to shop for the horses based off of their temperament and trainability, so a little bit different than bidding on the flashy colors or the known horses. All of these White Mountain horses are currently at the Rock Springs facility in Wyoming. If we check out all of the horses from this HMA and their prices, a lot of them are already above $1,000. It is really difficult to decide which horse to buy based off of a few pictures and a very short video. But I think it's important to have a keen eye if you're shopping on these internet adoptions, because there's a lot of things that you can accidentally miss. I had thought really hard about bidding on a specific horse, and as I was going back and reviewing his video, I noticed something that would really prevent him from having a life as a riding horse. After seeing a few pictures of this guy out in the wild, I had to check him out and see if he had as much presence in the holding pens as he did when he was running on the range. I think I was maybe drawn to him because he does remind me a lot of Studman. I even sent some pictures and the video to a few of my Mustang friends just asking for their opinion. While reviewing his video, I did notice that he has what appears to be a pretty significant amount of arthritis in one of his knees. Pretty common in an older horse, especially one that has been out on the range their entire life. This is the kind of horse that it would probably be unrealistic to turn into a riding animal. I tried to find some pictures for you guys of what exactly is probably going on in his knee. First, I'm going to just slow down the video so you can kind of see right there on the front of his knee is just a pretty significant bump. You can really see it when he turns around and trots away. Again, he does look pretty sound at the moment, but I'm sure he is jazzed up because he's in a strange place. Osteoarthritis is pretty common in horses, especially in this area if they've worked hard. Here is an example of a close-up of it. Here is an example of some arthritis just starting out. The edges of the bone look a little bit spiky. As the horse experiences more wear and tear on the joint, it may start to look a little bit like this. This radiograph, you can actually see a tiny piece of bone that has chipped off and is probably making it very uncomfortable for this horse. And then once the arthritis moves along, it looks a little bit more like this. It can be pretty gnarly, and typically this is visible from the outside of the horse's leg without any radiographs at all. Sometimes the bumps can be fluid, but without being able to get an x-ray, you would have no idea until you got the horse home. I didn't want to waste away too much of the day, so I went over to the barn and brushed all of the horses. I took some video, and then they all got their dinner. It isn't quite yet spring, but these guys are definitely starting to lose the majority of their winter hair. I did see next week it is going to get all the way up into the 60s, so I think a lot of them will lose their hair at that time. When I was done with chores, I made it back to my computer to see what all of the horses had sold for. Some of you may remember this little girl. I had her marked as one of my favorites just for a personal project. Really happy this little gray horse got a bid on her. She did get bid on the last internet adoption, but I guess they must have not taken her. I've noticed, since I do like a lot of the plainer colored horses, that sometimes they just don't get any bids on them. I believe this gelding has been up for 2, or maybe this is his 3rd internet adoption. This gelding is actually from the same HMA that Stewie's mother is from. He has the same nice strong legs. They're about the same size, but I do think Stewie has a little bit of a prettier head. I noticed there were a few Cremello horses in this offering, and this girl I was certain was going to go for a bit more money. $1,400 is still quite a bit for a completely unhandled horse, and it looks like this girl was born in the facility, so she's never actually been out on the range. She is old enough that her tail should be a bit longer, and I do think that these horses that get born in holding and don't have access to fresh grass, you can kind of see that their hair is not as healthy as it could be. It is really hard to replace the omega-3s and vitamin E that just naturally is in fresh grass when they are in a dry lot situation like most of the ones in holding. This girl still does have a rather sparkly iridescent coat. She looks like she might have a little bit of a gait abnormality. With such a short video, it's really hard to tell what happened before this, so she might have tweaked it getting moved around. Here is another horse that was born in holding. I'm really surprised he didn't get any bids. He is kind of a cool looking horse. He also shows some signs that he does have a vitamin and mineral deficiency. He looks a little bit sun bleached, but that lightening of the coat can be from not having enough of the right minerals to have the hair grow properly. This guy also does have a little bit of a hitch in his giddy up, but you can't really tell if he's lame or it's just some kind of abnormality from not being worked in a round pen ever. You have to remember these horses have just been standing around, so it's a little bit like if you were just hanging out watching TV on the couch and then someone had you run around for a while. The nice thing about the internet adoption is when you go to pick up the horse, you can decide that it's not the right fit for you for whatever reason you want, really. I was a little bit bummed to see that this colt got some bids on him this time. I've watched the last 3 internet adoptions pretty closely, so it was really nice to see that a few of the horses that have been available multiple times did get bids. I saw this cute little black horse last summer at an in-person event, and it's really nice to see that after a few times on the internet adoption, he finally got a few bids and hopefully will be going home with a new owner soon. With him being on the younger side, I really wonder how different he's going to look at pickup, because this was taken all the way back in November, I think. It did seem like there was a lot of traction for some of the older horses, but a few of the really cute little sorrel ones I had marked still left somehow with no bids after the auction was over. Here is another one from Salt Wells Creek, and I actually saw some pictures of this one in the wild too. Kind of surprised nobody decided to snatch her up. This bay mare is really pretty. She's a decent size, but I think unfortunately people are passing her over because she does have an older injury to one of her eye sockets. It doesn't really seem to be making her any more reactive. She's actually pretty calm compared to a lot of the Mustangs, so hopefully next internet adoption she'll get some bids on her. Because I have been keeping a pretty close eye on a number of horses over the last few months, it is really interesting to see that I am starting to be drawn to these older mares. I know I've talked about this horse before. This must be her third internet adoption, and then maybe on the next one she'll be available for sale. It is kind of odd that she already is branded for long-term holding. And while her video is not ideal, the person standing in the pen with her is a positive sign because she's just not jumping out. With all of these older mares having no bids on them, I'm feeling a little bit better about waiting so long to get another Mustang. The very first couple of internet adoptions I watched, there were a few that I really liked and was not able to buy. I do think a lot of people get attached to one specific horse and often forget that there are thousands of horses that are looking for new homes in these holding facilities. Most of the facilities do offer in-person adoptions at certain points in the year. And then you're also able to make appointments at most of them to privately go through the horses, and you can basically adopt anyone you want at most places. For those adopters on the East Coast, a lot of times this is not an option. So having them available on the internet makes it a lot easier, especially with the free shipping across the country. With so many plain bay mares on my list, I was getting them all a little bit confused. Some of these girls were really plumped up for winter. I think that's something that just naturally happens when you have a bunch of wild horses standing around and holding, getting access to. Typically it's alfalfa. I'm really trying hard to narrow down my list, so I went through all of these bay mares and picked out my absolute favorite. All of these girls are pretty average across the board, not too short, not too tall. They all are a little bit overweight. They are all also a little bit more on the less reactive side. There's a bit of commotion going on with other horses running back and forth past her, and this one seems pretty calm. After looking at a bunch of these plain girls, I picked out this 7-year-old as my favorite out of the kind of group of older bay mares I have marked. Now, you guys know that I like a short, fat little horse. This girl is a little bit too overweight for me. She has only had about 250 views, which is really sad because she does seem like a very nice horse. While I do think her weight has something to do with it, she does seem to be a very cerebral horse. It looks like she is able to calm herself down when something exciting happens. That could actually be the reason that she's a little bit heavier than the other mares. Without getting spooked, she's just exercising a lot less in the little pens. Another one that was my favorite that did not have any bids was this mare that looks an awful lot like my Scarlet mare. It is a little bit sad to go through these plain brown horses and realize that they have a significantly lower number of views than some of the other horses. This girl is a bit on the sweaty side, but even still she does have a particularly kind eye. It seems like every auction, a new cute little brown meatball will pop up that instantly becomes my favorite. This next one is super cute. She doesn't have hardly any views, and this is the first auction that I saw her become available for. She is very plain with no markings on her at all, but all of the pieces are perfect. She even has really nice, strong feet. This mare is the perfect height for me. I like them right around 14.2. She's from Twin Peaks and she has a really low number of views. One thing that I really liked about this horse was her very calm demeanor. It was kind of funny watching her videos. You can turn the sound on when you're watching them online. And near the end of her first video, you could hear the person videotaping getting a little frustrated because this mare would not trot around. After struggling for a while, there is a second clip where you can tell that there is a human inside the pen with this girl. She just seems very even keeled. Even when there's a person in the pen with her, she is pretty aware of where they are, and she does turn to the inside facing the person instead of away, which is actually a really good sign. She is not so scared that she's running around frantic, and she's brave enough to face the human when turning. She is already ahead of the game as far as I'm concerned if she already knows how to do those two things. This is a mare that I thought really hard about bidding on and then going to see in real life at pickup. The really nice thing about the internet adoption is that you can bid on the horses, pay for them, go to pick them up, and if you get there and they're not exactly what you wanted, you do not have to take them. You don't get your money refunded, but you do get a credit to put towards another horse. This guy was one that was on my list, but I am a little bit surprised that he had bids on him because he is pretty obviously not sound. Like I was saying earlier though, you have no idea if he maybe tweaked his hip coming in or hit it on a fence or got squished by some other horses. So this would be one that I would plan on bidding on, and then maybe if he was still lame at pickup, maybe deciding not to get him. I did pick out one horse to be the high seller and I was not even close. This 11-year-old was my pick. He is a curly. These horses can be really popular. They're supposed to be hypoallergenic. So if you're allergic to horses, a lot of times you can be around this type of horse a little bit easier. There were a few horses from the White Mountain HMA that were listed. They didn't say anything about them being curlies, but this guy is very obviously a curly. It looks like they have him listed at 14 hands, so that might be the reason that he didn't get sold for a higher price. I think there were a few steals in this group of horses. I did notice this handsome curly did have a younger horse following him around. Since they've really not been in holding too long, I think there's still quite a bit of herd dynamics at play. I did try and go back to see which other little palomino was on the other side of the fence. I was thinking it was this horse, but I actually believe that the one following him was not listed on the internet adoption because this guy is way too tall. I do know they're having an in-person event at Rock Springs, and I would imagine that a lot of the White Mountain horses are going to be available at that. It's very possible that they held a bunch back for people to adopt in person. Another really striking horse that I was watching that did not go for nearly as much money as I had thought is this 13-year-old gelding. He is a very similar sooty palomino color. There was one a few auctions ago that was the same exact color and went for around $7,000. This guy appears to have not as great of movement, but as you can tell, he is pretty jazzed up. I think if he were in holding a bit longer, he may have appeared a little bit more calm for his video. I would imagine that a lot of these recently gathered White Mountain horses are going to have a harder time settling in than some of the other Mustangs. Whoever got this super cute little pinto got a screaming deal as well. I was sure this one was going to go for a lot more money. I noticed the majority of these White Mountain horses are quite stout little things. This guy is only 5 years old, so he probably has a little bit of growing left to do, but he would definitely make a solid little horse for someone. Another one of the horses that I was really surprised didn't get any bids at the Buy It Now event last time was this super cute little filly. She was another one that her video clearly shows the person inside the pen with her. She did have a little bit of a note about an old injury to her mouth, but it's pretty obvious she has a great brain. With the weather being so terrible this winter, it has been fun to have a place where I can go and look at a bunch of horses while I wait for spring to come. It looks like the next internet adoption is not for a couple of months. It seems like they have them every other month. I'm already making some plans to go to some other in-person events this summer if I can squeeze them in. I do want to make sure I get all of my younger horses started under saddle before I commit to another one, but it's good to do your homework and be prepared so when you're ready for another horse, you have all of your ducks in a row. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.